Hi everyone, welcome to Basket Japan. This is Marta. I'm from Japan. I've been living in Japan for many years. I'm 100% Japanese. In this channel, I will introduce various kinds of Japanese culture. I'm a guide I will read you to better understanding of Japan. Okay, let's get started. Today's topic is katana, Japanese sword. Katana is characterized by a curved single-edged blade with a circular or square guard and a long grip to accommodate two hands. But for what reason were they made? To what purpose were they used? Which Japanese sword is famous and popular? How does it influence Japanese society? Today, I'm going to answer these questions. When we think of Japan, we think of samurai and we think of Japanese swords. The Japanese sword is a world-class iron weapon. In medieval Japan, before the advent of cannon, tanks, and fighter planes, the Japanese sword and bow and arrow were the main weapons in Japan. The Japanese sword should have become unnecessary in times of peace, but even after the end of the warring period, the Japanese sword continued to have a special significance. This is because the Japanese sword is deeply related to the craftsmanship, history, and spirituality of the Japanese people. In fact, today, the Japanese sword is a cultural and historical icon. Like Japanese castles, they are treated as a work of art, crafts, and cultural assets. We also can see these works of art in the museum in Boston and the Metropolitan Museum in the United States. Why then have Japanese swords been so important in Japan? Weapons such as bows and arrows and armor were also developed uniquely in Japan. However, they are not as important as the Japanese sword. The reason may be that the Japanese sword symbolizes the history of power struggles. Because the sword is a tool for killing, it has been deeply involved in historical battles between warriors and assassinations. In other words, it has such a deep connection with Japanese history. Among famous warriors, the possession of a sword was a sign of authority. Therefore, they are more common than armor or bows and arrows, and are considered Japan's national treasures. To begin with, one of the three sacred objects in Japan is the sword of Kusanagi. The three sacred weapons are regalia, three kinds of treasures. One of them is a sword, called the sword of Kusanagi. This is a story in mythology, and it is said to have been taken out of the body of a giant snake when Susanoo no Mikoto, a god who was a proverb child in the heavenly realm, killed the eight-forked serpent on Earth. From the very beginning of Japanese history, swords like this have been important. As the world became more samurai-oriented in the Kamakura period, the importance of the Japanese sword increased. Initially, the sword was straight, but it was gradually warped to improve its property as a blade. The beauty of the Japanese sword as a work of art comes from its elaborate construction. First is a blade of a Japanese sword. This blade is warped. It is like the moon. Western swords are designed to strike from the top of a shield. The Japanese sword was made to cut off the head of a living person. The blade also has pattern, wavy or straight. These patterns are tasteful. In addition, there is engraving on the blade. This is called sword blade carving. It is an art of engraving. Within the narrow space of the blade, there are engravings such as a dragon coiled around the sword, tools used in Buddhism, and a pine, bamboo, and plum pattern. Next is the tsuba. The tsuba is a round metal fitting between the blade and the part of the sword that is held by the grip. Various decorations were also applied to the tsuba. Birds, flowers, and clouds were also decorated on the tsuba. It is also treated as a work of art on its own. The handle, called tsuka, is a part that holds the sword. It is wrapped with a silk thread or leather cord, and there are various designs here as well. Then, there is a scabbard that holds the sword. The scabbard is the most colorful part of the design. It can be black, ochre, red, blue, or any other color. Basically, Japanese swords are very simple and conservative in design, but there are many eye-catching and gorgeous designs for the scabbard. In other words, Japanese swords have both functional and decorative beauty condensed into one sword. Furthermore, there is a wide variety of types depending on the size of the sword. The most commonly thought of swords are officially called uchikatana, but there are also swords such as slightly larger tachi, smaller wakizashi and tanto, and the larger naginata. There are a wide variety of types. This is why Japanese swords are highly valued as arts and crafts. The art of swordsmithing is found in the various parts of the sword. In the Middle Ages, swordsmiths were even awarded the title of nobility. Moreover, this work of art is accompanied by various legends. After all, it has walked through the ranks of Japan's most powerful men of the past. They are, so to speak, living witness of history. There are 5 swords known as the 5 great swords in Japan. They are Mikazuki Munechika, Dojikiri Yasuna, Otate Mitsuyo, Onimaru Kunitsuna, and Juzumaru. These swords were established in the Kamakura period. That alone makes them valuable as antiques. After all, each of them has its own legend. For example, Ashikaga Yoshiteru was a shogun who possessed the whole of the 5 great swords and was highly skilled in swordsmanship. In the end, he was surrounded by a large number of enemies and assassinated. But it is said that at the moment of the assassination, he stabbed several swords into the tatami mat and killed the attacking enemies, one after another. It's unclear whether the 5 great swords were present at that time, but it's possible they witnessed the moment of the coup in 1565. There's also an anecdote that the shogun, who had nightmares about demons appearing in other swords, stopped having nightmares when he used Onimaru Kunitsuna to cut down a carving of demons. The 5 great swords have crossed the paths of the power that be in Japan. They are also highly valuable because they have survived various wars and are still in use today. Needless to say, they are excellent in appearance and sharpness. Other swords include Sosamonji, which was used by Imagawa Yoshimoto, Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, and Nagasone Kotetsu, which is said to have been the favorite sword of Kondo Isami, the leader of the Shinsengumi, and was used during the Ikeda incident. Japanese swords have also appeared in movies and historical dramas alongside their characters. In the recent famous manga One Piece, a swordsman named Roronoa Zoro has appeared and gained popularity. All of Japan's samurai at the end of the Tokugawa shogunate practiced kendo, the art of fencing. Learning swordsmanship was a kind of status. For Japanese boys, being a strong swordman was something to aspire to and something cool. The popularity of swordsmen such as Miyamoto Musashi, Sasaki Kojiro, Yagyu Munenori, and Yagyu Jubei in Japan, as well as the fact that swordsmanship appears in many manga even today, is evidence that samurai and warriors fighting with swords are considered cool. Thus, swordsmanship and the Japanese sword are deeply rooted in Japanese history. It is like the soul of the Japanese people, a precious culture asset that has passed on to future generations the sense of the pre-modern Japanese people who found aesthetics in fighting for their lives. The Japanese sword has a special significance for Japanese people because of its sharpness and appearance. The legends associated with it is high level as an art and craft object, and as an entity that speaks of the history of pre-modern Japan. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you very much for listening. My only hope for you is that this video helps understand Japan well. I'll be back soon. Don't forget to subscribe. Goodbye.